As the train was about to arrive, a man waiting at the platform suddenly collapsed and fell off onto the tracks. There was no one around willing to lend him a hand, and some even took out their phones to take pictures. In this critical moment, only an old man didn't hesitate to jump down and quickly help the man up. But after he helped the man, he remained still on the track. The people around were shocked by the old man's actions. They only then realized that the old man, who had just saved the man's life, wanted to die. The old man's name was Ove. This was not the first time he had done something like this. Since his wife passed away, Ove had been living in sadness and depression. His parents and wife were all gone, and he didn't have any children. Now, with his wife gone, Ove was a lonely man in the world. The first time he attempted to end himself, he was wearing the same suit he had on today. Ove hung a rope from the ceiling and stood on a stool. But just as he was about to proceed, the new neighbor moved in. It was just that the new neighbor was not very skilled at driving and struggled to park his car. He even hit Ove's mailbox. Ove couldn't stand it and went out to help the new neighbor park his car. Then he went back to his house to continue his plan. The rope hadn't been able to stay around his neck. The neighbor's children ran up to his window, and Ove was afraid of scaring the child, so he quickly took the rope down. The next day finally brought some peace. Just as Ove took out the rope to hang it from the ceiling, a knock on the door interrupted him. It turned out to be the neighbor's children, who brought him some food to thank him for his help the day before and borrowed his ladder while they were at it. Then an old friend's wife asked him to help fix their heating. While talking to the new neighbor, the old friend's wife accidentally mentioned Ove's wife, Sonia. Sonia's death was a forever pain in Ove's heart, and he couldn't bear hearing other people talk about her. He went back into the house angrily. Looking at a photo of Sonia, he smiled foolishly. He touched her clothes and sniffed the scent left on them. Ove stood on the chair once again without any hesitation and put the rope around his neck. He kicked away the stool beneath him, and finally he achieved what he wanted. Ove hung there with memories flooding his mind. It felt as if he had returned to his childhood when his mother had just passed away and his father, who spoke very little, rarely communicated with him. Only when he saw Ove's report card did his father seem happy. But it was because of Ove's report card that his father, who was boasting to everyone about it, was killed by an oncoming train. And the memory froze at that moment. It turned out that Ove woke up. The rope around his neck had actually snapped. Ove was furious and had to go ask his friend's wife for the water pipe. He also fixed their heating while he was at it. Looking at his old friend and longtime enemy, Ove shared his plan with him. After getting the water pipe, he was ready to leave. However, his old friend and longtime enemy, who had suffered a stroke and paralyzed, held onto Ove and wouldn't let him go. After bidding farewell to his old friend, Ove had a meal, which was leftovers from the neighbor's food, and washed the container before returning it. On the container, it said, "I really liked it, thank you." Ove was ready to implement his plan again. He went to the garage and connected one end of the pipe to the exhaust and the other end into his car. He played his favorite music and went back to his younger days once Aegean. Life hadn't been easy for Ove after his father died. He inherited his father's house, but the land caught the attention of real estate developers. They stopped at nothing to achieve their goals and even set fire to the neighbor's house in the middle of the night. Ove rushed into the fire and saved a child and an old man. However, he turned around only to see his own house on fire. He hoped the firefighters would put it out, but the real estate developers used the excuse that the area was supposed to be demolished to prevent the firefighters from doing so. In this way, Ove lost his home. That warm and cozy house turned into rubble, and the watch his father left him was burnt. He lost everything. Homeless, Ove slept on the train. When he woke up, the train was already moving. There was a girl sitting across from him, reading a book. It was Sonia. Seeing Ove awake, she took the initiative to start a conversation with him. Ove's straightforwardness and rigidity left a deep impression on Sonia. At this moment, the ticket officer came to check the tickets, but Ove didn't have one. Being penniless, he couldn't afford to buy a ticket. Kind-hearted Sonia came to the rescue, but Ove hurriedly got off the train. This woman had silently walked into Ove's heart. Since then, for half a month in a row, he would take this train every day. Finally, one day, they met. Insecure, Ove wanted to repay the money to Sonia, but Sonia enthusiastically suggested that he pay her back by treating her to a dinner. They agreed to meet at a restaurant, but Ove only ordered a bowl of soup. Sonia asked why he wasn't eating, and Ove replied that he had already eaten at home. He wanted to eat less so that Sonia could have more of what she wanted. However, he suddenly realized that he, who had nothing, seemed unable to give Sonia happiness. He confessed that he was just a train cleaner and that his house had burned down. He was now broke. After saying this, he got up to leave, but Sonia pulled him back and they kissed. With Sonia's encouragement, Ove returned to school, pursued his education, and obtained an engineering certificate. On the day Ove received his certificate, he proposed to Sonia. Suddenly, there was a knocking sound on the door. Ove woke up again. It turned out that the neighbor's husband had fallen off the ladder. The ambulance had already taken him away. But she didn't have a driver's license, so she had to ask Ove to take them to the hospital. That's how his suicide was interrupted again. After dropping off the neighbor at the hospital, she entrusted Ove with her 2 children. The 2 little ones clung to Ove and asked him to read them stories. But these 2 little girls were quite difficult to handle. They insisted that Ove tell them stories in a bare voice. Although Ove had never had children in his life, he took care of these 2 girls very well. He took them back to the community. The 2 children hugged Ove, but he pushed them away directly. He was afraid that his heart would waver and he wouldn't be able to act on the plan and see his wife again. The next morning, early in the morning, still wearing the same suit, he went to the train station. Only the railroad tracks were fast and straightforward enough. He wanted to end it here. But suddenly, a passenger next to him fell ill and stumbled off the platform. Kind-hearted Ove jumped down from the platform and saved the passenger. But he didn't have any intention of coming back up. When Ove turned around, he saw his childhood self on the platform. He thought of his father's death scene back then and how much pain he had endured. In the last moment, Ove was pulled up by the people on the platform. He returned to the community. The neighbor called out to him. Her daughter had drawn a picture for him. The colored one was Ove. In her daughter's eyes, Ove was full of colors. The neighbor suggested that Ove teach her how to drive. But their conversation was interrupted by a strange sound. It turned out that an injured cat was hiding at Ove's doorstep. No one around could adopt the cat, so it had to stay at Ove's house. He knew his wife was kind, she would never agree to him abandoning the cat. So Ove decided to put his original plan on hold. He had to find a better home for the cat first. There is no substitute for the original movie. A good film is worth watching it yourself. But you don't know where you can watch these movies? Use Superbox. With Superbox, you can access all live TV channels in 4K quality. It also provides access to over 13,000 movies and series, and updates with the newest content very often. The total cost for one of these is 2 months of your cable bill. Then you never have to pay fees or bills ever again. Click the link in my bio and use my code to get it at a better price.